People who have had this faith journey for a long time, I think there's some value to that. And I think people should be encouraged that, like, yeah, maybe you weren't like some person who did all these crazy things. Like, that should be, in my opinion anyway, it should be recognized that, like, hey, you know, everybody's story is different, everybody's journey is different, and we should encourage both sides of those things, because there's something to be said about the longevity of having that relationship, having that fellowship with God.
I know many people who have prayed, well, God's just going to stop me in my tracks if I'm going to do this thing, and then God, please stop me if you don't want me to do that. And he will not. He will not. You should know. He knows you better. You know him better. You know the word better. That is, and maybe I'm emphasizing too much, but I'm telling you, I've seen it before. I've done it myself.
All right. What happens when you grow in a solid Bible-believing home, but still choose to seek truth for yourself? Today on Disrupted Truth, I'm sitting down with my dear and close friend, Phil Barnes. Many of you know him, a man who didn't just inherit faith, but he also owned it. In culture that's drifting, Phil stayed grounded, not in tradition, but in truth. If you're hungry for more than surface level faith, this conversation is going to challenge, confirm, and encourage your walk. Welcome to the Disrupted Truth, everybody. I'm Mark Heyer. This channel exists to inspire, motivate, and connect people to God, His Word, and His purpose for your life in the body of Christ. Phil, I'm so glad to have you here joining with me today, and very excited to hear about, you know, your story and what you have to say. You know, you were raised in a home rooted in God's word, which is great and is kind of rare in some aspects. I guess you and I do share that. You know, I grew up in church as well as you did. And so I guess, you know, how did you come to the point where your faith became deeply personal and not just something that, you know, that was inherited?
Yeah. So I didn't know that maybe my life and upbringing was rare. I just figured it was how everyone was brought up, right? I guess that's how everyone probably thinks however they grew up. But and yeah, I'd say, just like you said, I grew up in a church environment. My dad was a pastor's kid. My mom went to church with her family, Baptist church and stuff. So when I was birthed out, we basically were birthed right into the church nursery. Yeah. But I mean, what does that mean for me personally? Right? I don't know. I don't even necessarily know yet, but, and I'm going to kind of circle back to that. I give a lot of credit to my parents for doing what they did. I think my testimony, as much as maybe can be somewhat relatable to someone in my position, but maybe takes something, if you're a parent too, on how my parents maybe did it. Cause again, I give them, I mean, essentially all the credit for where I'm at now. So
that's good.
Other than just physically, right? They put me here physically, but the rest of it too. So, we grew up through nursery, and what my parents did is, as me and my brother, so I'm the oldest. My brother is a year and a half younger than me, and then my sister is a few years younger than me. So I'm one of three, the oldest. As we, especially me and my brother, would go through the different stages, you know, nursery, then Sunday school, and then youth group. My parents were there to be ministry leaders of those. And they weren't elders of the church necessarily or anything, but they would take the, position in the ministry that we were in to just be a part of our lives and be like a guiding part of that ministry and to keep their own bearings on what the church programs were essentially putting into us. See, that's kind of the intro. We were at a church for a while until I was about in my early teens, before high school, and then the church, I don't want to say fell apart but the elder had an elder board, and there was some mess and stuff going on with the elder board. The pastor was typically hired in. It wasn't like they would replace him, but then the one pastor left. It got real messy. My parents decided after a few years of trying to tough it out that that we were not in the right spot. So, we moved on to another church. Mm-hmm. It was Calvary Chapel, Old Bridge.
Okay.
We had, they were very happy with the doctrine being taught, biblical, verse by verse. Mm-hmm. The doctrine was solid, and we decided to make that like our new home spot. We went through youth group and everything like that, and that kind of takes me up to maybe high school and beyond. So I would say where I took it myself, because I mean, as the head knowledge goes on, we were in Awana. I could recite verses all through the Bible, and asked to do what was it? The speed reads you to. Mm-hmm. All right, you have the Sunday school teacher at the front of the room say a verse out. I mean, I would always be the first one to have found it and then read it, and yeah. So I mean, we were just steeped in the Bible, in Christian foundations, and all that. But I would say I took it on my own in college. So I got baptized when I was 16. My parents knew what baptism meant, and that before I had all the head knowledge and I had like fundamentals, but like until I was ready to take it on my own, they understood that that's what baptism meant. And so I was 16. We were at Bridge Fest, and they were going to get baptized in the Atlantic Ocean off the boardwalk, and so that's where I got baptized. And still, I'd say it was all head knowledge and stuff, but solid. I knew the ins and outs of the foundations of Christianity, and even some of the more advanced stuff. My dad always liked to kind of study the next step and sort of have intellectual discussions about just the Bible and the history and the accounts and stuff in there. So we were used to that. College was, I commuted, so I still had this tie to home, but, this is where the science, so I was mechanical engineering, technologies, deep in the sciences, especially the first couple of years were all physics and biology and chemistry and stuff like that. So I went to public high school, which I have no reference to today's public high school, because today's public school system is very different. So I can't even say that I would make a similar choice, but at the time, the public school system. So I went through public just college, and that's where I started to hear the biology, evolution, creation, old earth, things like that. And my parents essentially just told me, hey, you're challenge these things, look them up yourself. I mean, you're studying in this course, in a secular course at school, but we've been taught different, and now you're actually inputting like, knowledge to take this into a practical career. So it's important. They knew I was listening and retaining and learning and studying all that stuff. So they just encouraged me to challenge it and study on my own. And that's when God really spoke to me first time, the most impactful for the first time. I was able to find that wherever I was, had something in a class come up, evolution or biology, I was able to turn over that rock and find what maybe evolution explained 3% of. The Bible had 97% of it already down. And I don't mean just in the text. So the concept in the Bible there's not too much that goes into it, creation or there's some, right? So it gives you the outline of what happened. And I found that whenever I studied even one step deeper than what the secular school systems were telling me, I found the Bible repeatedly more and more reliable at younger things, dinosaurs, evolution, and all these things. So I really got into the nitty gritty technical to the point where I was studying like DNA chains and stuff. And then I was like, I'm so deep. I almost lost. I'm like, I've taken this so far to study and verify the sciences, the physical sciences, and God. It was just like as when I pulled a thread, like 3 more opened up, and I pulled those threads, and like 3 more, and it just would take me to really what I found to be truths, reliable, repeatable truths, design, a creator. So yeah, that's what basically, I don't have a testimony that has this radical change point in my life. I know a lot of people do, like this total deliverance. But I hang pretty much my experiences through those 4 years of college as that. Like, I was able to challenge students. I was never like an antagonist in the class or something, but often I would challenge students after class, this or that, or would you hear, with the probing kind of questions. And I thought I was being like an apologetics kind of, I'm going to prove to these guys things. I realize now that it was pretty brutal, because I would tear them up pretty good. I would just pull the question. I remember one point we were in the hall and there's like 6 or 7 students asking me questions, and then someone kind of counter answering and stuff. And by the time 10, 15 minutes are up, the rest of the students are trashing this other guy. Phil already explained that. He brought that up. He already proved to you this. And it was this rehash. So that it was pretty brutal. I realized that's not the way to, I mean, I hope maybe seeds were planted or something in these kids' heads, or, you know, but it was not loving. It was not all, but it gave me a foundation to say, like, hey, you have the right information. You have the truth. You know it well enough to stand on not only then the foundations, but God captured me with the physical sciences and you know, structure of the universe and how stars are created. I'm like, this all is so designed, so logical. And I used to know down to like just an absurd level of detail, because that's where I go. That's where my head goes. And so I hold a lot onto that as my first kind of way God spoke and proved to me I'm true, and all the foundations then that I knew before and were steeped in from my young age, I had no doubt in them, and just reaffirmed kind of what my parents had brought me up through was true, accurate.
Yeah, and that's something that I do admire about you, is your passion for detail, like you know, like scripturally. And since I've gotten to know you, like I do appreciate that passion, and it's a good thing. And I think too often, like to your point earlier, you know, that you know, we do make a lot of like these major transformations of people who, you know, they didn't know God and they met God, and everything turned around and changed for them, which is good.
Yeah.
But I think there's something to be said about the stability of having a relationship through the duration, because it is easy to easily just kind of give up and go astray. And I know I'm guilty of that. Like, I haven't really shared my testimony as of yet, which I know I need to do, because I've been
interview you next.
Yeah, you're going to have to interview me on that, Phil. So, but you know, even me, like I was raised in a Christian home, and you know, my dad specifically always taught me to challenge you know, make sure you know the truth, challenge others in what they're saying, and really know the scriptures for yourself. And, you know, like there were times I you know, my journey took me down some paths that I thought was the right way, and then realizing that, you know, I was just kind of like misinformed and mistaught. But I did want to point out, like, I think it's important that people who have had this faith journey for a long time, I think there's some value to that. And I think people should be encouraged that, like, yeah, maybe you weren't like some person who did all these crazy things. Like that should be, in my opinion anyway, it should be recognized that, like, hey, you know, everybody's story is different. Everybody's journey is different. And we should encourage both sides of those things, because there's something to be said about the longevity of having that relationship, having that fellowship with God, because it is one of those things that helps strengthen the body, right? Like there's experiences that you've had that other people may not have been able to have, and you can encourage them in that. And it's also a good reminder as well for people who maybe have been in it, to see someone else come along and their lives being radically changed, and them having this youthful passion again and fire again. Like it should excite us that have been around for a while. So I guess
I think you said a couple key kind of pieces there. You said earlier, eventually it became my own. So I realized there's a decision point typically on someone's who has a journey like mine, who grew up in the Christian household, is eventually you either have to claim it for your own and prove it to yourself and have God answer your questions or whatever the calling is for me. Like I said, physical sciences and that whole science study route and path. But some people don't go that way, right? They'll grow up in a Christian environment, but then when it comes time to detach from their parents and claim faith for their own, they go the other way.
Yeah.
So I've seen plenty both ways, but eventually you have to determine on your own. There's nothing that your parents are going to guide you through to salvation. And yeah, I grew up in a Christian home. Yeah, that'll lay foundation that is invaluable, like you said, but eventually it'll be yours or not. Like you'll reject it. But I think in the Bible, there's verses that go into this is when parents can lay that foundation for their kids. It's there. Even if they wander away or decide to reject initially, there's still that advantage in their head. God's calling them from all those early childhood memories and from parents. So again, word to the parents.
Yeah. And thankfully we both had parents that stayed grounded and rooted. And at least for me, I probably gave my parents more of a, physical conditions or concerns, like doing some of the things that I did. And but I mean just what I've gone through for myself, looking back, like I'm so grateful and so thankful that my parents raised me in that environment. And I'm sure if they were here today, they'd I think be kind of wiping their brow, like, thank God, like finally the Lord answers prayers.
My parents don't like to take a lot of credit for what they've done. They're like, oh, well, they just turned out all right. And then we always tell them, like, you got to give yourself more credit than that. They had this nice balance of not being overbearing, but then still being tethered and knowing where to give space and not. Because I know some people want to reject their faith because just their parents and the way maybe they were just overbearing. Maybe they forced them into going to church, and then they're like, I want to get away from all that. Yeah. And I can't even say it's a bad idea. You do need to detach that way, but sometimes it's my parents had this balance where we were detaching and there was space growing, yet they would still maybe help me find a couple books that would pull some threads on, carbon dating and this and that from a biblical perspective and then I'd eat it up. So I'd give that to them too for the guided approach over being overbearing or being absent. So
yeah, which is it's a challenge, right? To find that balance as a parent, where you don't want to be overbearing, but you also want to be loving enough that you're encouraging and guiding. Because how many times do we hear it, right? Like so many people are like, oh, well, I used to be a Christian and, I grew up in a really strict household and very conservative values. And they kind of walk away from the faith because of that. But it's like, I'm telling you, man, like you're going to appreciate that, because when you find yourself back again, you're going to be thankful and grateful, for your parents for doing that. Now, I do throw in the disclaimer that there are some parents that I do think that can be overbearing in that area and almost borderline abusive to some degree. And there are some traumas that do take place with that. So I'm not necessarily talking about that group, but more or less the group of people where it's like, yeah, you're young and you are like, my parents are just being so overbearing. But I'll tell you what, man, I'm grateful that my parents forced me to go to church at times, forced me to be a part of youth group, forced me to do those things. And I'm extremely thankful for
I think when the decision point comes back to the individual as opposed to like, yeah, my family's a Christian family. Like when it comes time for that person to take it on their own, mine was seamless. And it's because of my parents. they weren't overbearing and still forcing. By the time I was in college, they were guiding like, hey, this is up to you. Like you can study, you can read, you can verify the same way we've been doing. Like you can see and do this on your own. And so I did. And then I took that on my own. But if the experience is force, and there's not a lot of guidance into the next phase of adopting it on your own, then that's where I think people really go out. I'm like, I want to get as far away as possible, and they may eventually then come back and claim it for their own through a different way. My parents were gentle with that, where they didn't know that the physical sciences and me getting into engineering and was going to be like what really I hold a huge amount of my faith on. It seems I don't. Faith, and then for me, faith was less about believing stuff I didn't know, because I took the science route and the head knowledge route. I was like, I barely need any faith to believe that this is how it works, and that there is an intelligent designer, a creator, the physics of the earth, of the universe. This is all already found out by modern science. And then you look at what the Bible says happened. You're like, these are the same thing. And then you look at theories like evolution and like how life evolved from single cell off. And you're like, you've already proven this can't be within your own science world, yet you hold to these theories. But the Bible says what backs up what you were finding and backs up. And still to this day, there's like insane discoveries. I think it's even easier now to believe if that's your drive, is to look into the sciences and creation aspect of things. It is, I almost considered, I didn't need faith necessarily, other than literally having God come down and speak audibly to me, which when I opened these books and saw Genesis line up with, all of the physical sciences, I'm like, this just makes sense. So my parents did not know that I would take that, but they saw as I matured and what spoke to me, they, again, guide. It's tough. I don't know how they did it. Good for them. They probably prayed about it, and then they'll give credit to God, which sure.
Which is good.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And kind of to your point is you found it for yourself. And that is really the most important thing, is you've found your relationship with God for you, and not just what, like maybe what your parents were like hoping for, and at least trying to guide you down. And I think that's important, is everybody has to find their own, their own connection, right? Like they have to find what it is that draws them to God. So I guess
for a lot of people, that is a radical delivery, that they hold on to, that experience. But for someone growing up like me, maybe it is something different, that you'll put your backing behind, your foundation behind. So like I said, I don't have a time where I knew, like, I accepted Christ. Like, I don't have that time and date. As soon as I could say the word Jesus, I was saying it, claiming it, versus, but I do have a time when I knew that I took it from my, my parents and my home, and took it to me. So.
Yeah. And it lends to, I think that's the most important thing is, and I think what we're getting at is it's got to be, you got to own it. It's got to be yours.
Yeah. You still need that fallback to know at the end of all the chaos that's happening in your life and all the chaos happening in the world, like, you still need to be able to go back and say, like, I know God has me secure. I know my faith is secure. And that's, like I said, that's my time. More than proved to myself that God is real. He has a plan for my life. I can have a real relationship with him, and I see the results of that back and forth. And that sort of goes further into my life there.
Yeah.
As you ask the next probing question.
Well, so with that, then I guess, even being grounded, in truth, and kind of finding your own relationship, were there moments in your faith where that was tested, and what was it that helped you to kind of stay anchored in that?
Yeah, I can't say I ever questioned my faith. I know now too that one of the gifts of the Spirit is faith. I can't maybe fully go know what that means. God's never had me in a position to challenge whether or not I believed him. Now, were the times where I thought maybe he's got me on a wacky path, or maybe I'm on a wacky path and he's kind of, all right, well, you put yourself here. There are times like that. I'd say, so right after college, I got a job. So I actually moved. I moved to the shore, not too far. I mean, still in New Jersey, right? But moved to the shore. So I'm not in my parents' house, right? I was commuting in college. So like, dude, we had like a full garage and like people coming. We were doing music and car stuff, and it was fun. And my brother being the same age as me, pretty much, we had a lot of fun with that. But all right, so moved out, and then I was trying to find a church. The amount of knowledge I had maybe soaked up with studying the sciences and stuff in Genesis. I could not find that in any local churches. And I had not known maybe the value of Calvary Chapel's church structure. Like, right, they are verse by verse. They pride themselves on their doctrine and a clear articulation of that. So I was like, all right, cool. We went to a good church. So I'm trying to find another church, and I could not. So and I just stopped going to church. I realized that the information that I had, or my ability to research on my own, was far superior than most other people going to church. And I don't want to say, maybe that sounds arrogant or something, but like, I had known how to study, and I'd known how to look 3-4 levels deep. And every church I'd gone to, we're struggling with the milk, the fundamentals still. And I'm like, I'm not being fed in a lot of these churches. I did not understand the value of fellowship at all. I am pretty introverted, just naturally. I'm fine being on my own, and my emotions are mine, and I don't need an outlet necessarily for them. And so I just stopped going to church. My parents, as maybe distant as they were now, always encouraged me, just keep going, just keep finding one. It may not be a perfect fit, all that, right? I'm like, so I'd probably say 2, 3, maybe 4 years. I would just study on my own. I had my own personal devotions, and I felt like I was still learning maybe a lot. There is a series online. I know Joe talks about this too. Know Your Enemy. And that series, when I came across it, which I kind of forgot how I came across it. I don't know if someone recommended it to me or just in my research and stuff came across it. That pulled threads other than just creation and the sciences. I just got into the world systems, financial, like the global plans. And a lot of this immediately I picked up on it because I knew the Bible well enough to know the prophecy in there for Daniel, Revelation, and the signs knowing the end times are coming. One world systems, one's financial system, Satan's goals to be omnipresent and omnipotent. I knew all these were in the text. And then when I found this Know Your Enemy, I realized it was already happening. It is well within the work. So I started pulling the threads on that all the way down from numerology to occult things, UFOs. I mean, the range goes way out there into everything else. And I'm like, well, hey, it looks like I've got way more to research now to get to the bottom, because like I'm getting to the bottom of all these little truths. And so that really was the next level where I realized the Bible was had way more in it. I took all the stuff that I had fundamentally kind of learned and I set them aside. I took all the extra stuff that maybe I had learned and I had my creation and science has been that I had validated and verified. I'm like, I need to take the rest of the Bible and I need to validate and verify all of it, everything else that's in there. So I at least once through, taking very detailed notes, no commentaries, no nothing. If God's going to tell me, he's going to speak to me, and maybe I'm not ready yet, maybe I am. Okay. So, but I took I really took the Bible down to, essentially every chapter, every verse, and I wanted to know if there was more meaning to it. And obviously there was way more to it. And it's just a depth of knowing God's character, what God's plans are, prophecy, things like that, what's coming next, beyond than the immediate was what he's done in the past, what he's done with the angels and their story, what he's doing in the future with new heaven, new earth, all of that just unlocked. It was almost like such a flood of information. I had asked a couple pastors and friends that I knew. I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this? Like, this is just so much information. I don't even know. Like, is God showing me something or telling me something? And they're like, dude, this is, you're on the right track. Just study and keep studying. And I realized that maybe I think God doesn't give some of that to certain people if they're just not maybe ready. Because I took it as like I need to know so that I can be aware. But some people take it maybe more than that. Like, I need to know so I can take action and we can. So I think he just said, I'm going to show you a lot of stuff, and I'm going to show you who I am, and I'm going to show you my character and my personality and how I work. Just keep it. You just know that about. I want you to know me a little bit more, and so that was my next stage where God became way more personal, other than just proving fundamentals and proving that the Bible can be relied upon. Open up historical accuracy, proving archaeologically the people and places were actually real people and places. That a lot really. So I was trying to go to churches and I'm like, dude, I'm studying on my own, well beyond what's being taught from the pulpit on a Sunday morning or even on Wednesday. I found I did settle in on a Calvary Chapel in Southern Ocean County, and I realized on Wednesdays we would really get into the nitty gritty stuff. And I'm like, yes, this is the stuff that like needs to be hashed out, figured out. Like, what was happening here? How was God interacting with Joshua, and when the right as he's fighting this battle and the sun's standing. So I'm like, there's real actual astrological implications for what's happening. And it's like really pretty cool how far you can kind of look into some of these accounts, the Jerusalem and the walls falling, and like, what was really happening there? It's only like 6 or 7 verses in the text, but, and so, but then on Sundays it was very fundamental. So I asked the pastor, I'm like, hey man, we really get into these great discussions and studies of what's going on, and just, again, the character of God and what he's doing and what he's gonna do. And on Sunday, and really it came down to a lot of the congregation, was fine drinking milk. I don't know. There wasn't a huge desire necessarily to go the next step. And I'm like, I need friends and stuff bouncing these ideas. Like, did you read this? Did you read? And it always just kind of inside. But so that was my next kind of big step to. Yeah.
So like with God. That, like, not to interrupt you, but like with that, like how did that, how did you keep that sustainable and find the balance in that without, because you can easily, I think you can go in a variety of different directions. You could easily become very prideful and just be like, I know better than everybody here, and so I'm not going to be involved in this anymore. Or or you could just, I think there's a couple of different paths that you could take. So like with that, how did you find making that sustainable and still growing and maturing? Yeah.
And I'll give back credit to my family. So my family, I mean, they always were close communications and stuff. So as I found some of this, and my dad especially liked to approach things intellectually matters. We talk about some of this stuff, and he would talk more, about prophecy and things, and my brother too. So maybe my parents and my family were still just there to keep a perspective on it. I never went off on rabbit trails down, which I know happens. I know a few people who really they'll pull a thread and get lost, and then all of a sudden they're like rejecting Christianity because there's certain thread they pulled that took them in that direction. And I'm like, you know that. Yeah.
Cause then the thread starts to come apart, and then you're left with like 3 different strands, and you can easily,
So anything I couldn't get to the bottom of or whatever, I in mental box and put it aside. I'm like, all right, this is how far I kind of got on that topic or whatever else. And I had dozens and hundreds of kind of topics, but I just kept them. I don't know if God was just telling me like, yep, just, I'm showing you stuff, but I'm not having you do anything with them other than to know that I am real. I am here. I am your God. I am all powerful. I'm giving you glimpses of little pieces of myself. And so I don't know, I always kind of had that maybe perspective, and wouldn't hold it against necessarily people that as I would go to other churches, I wouldn't be like, man, these guys just so immature. But I was almost like I wanted people to know more, but and as discussions opened up with that, I realized there wasn't. So I sort of like shift gears a little bit with just cramming knowledge and headspace in there. And so one of my buddies at work, actually Christian, he's like, hey, you should come to this Way of the Master, it's called, and it's evangelism tools. Kirk Cameron, Ray Comfort, the Way of the Master. They take how Jesus approached people in the Gospels. They took that method and they made a evangelical tool. So I am an introvert, 100%. It is terrifying to me to talk to new people or whatever, but for some reason he kept asking me. And so I went, and it was exactly what I needed. Now this is right. So I've got all this head space and knowledge, and I'm trying to, there's no outlet for it. And he's like, do this. So I think this was the next like turning point for me was, people don't need to know this to know God. And this is God telling me that people need to know me. You have this, and that's all good. That's kind of builds some of your foundations and everything. You're good. Let's work on things you're not good at. And so the program gave me a way. I do recommend it to anybody, even the workbooks and stuff, because you can approach a family member or a coworker. It's not like you have to be out on the boardwalks with tracts, like talking to people, which is actually exactly what we did. But it's ways to bring up the gospel in normal communication, day-to-day conversations. How to not be insulting, but still be direct with the sin and sin issues and stuff. So it went. Basically, we went to one, and part of the program was to go to the boardwalk after. So right, Metz Shore, we went to I think it was Point Pleasant and Seaside Heights and stuff like that. So we would go to the boardwalk and we would give out tracts. And I'll tell you, I've never felt more spiritual, physical, emotional, whatever, all of it, oppression than when you are going to like it's a spiritual low. I guess you feel like, I don't want to do this. I'm going to come up with any reason I don't want to do this. And as you're driving there, it's like you're doing the wrong thing. Like, and then you start feeling sick, and then you start feeling mad. And as soon as you give that first person a track and start a conversation, it's just spiritual oppression. All of that, like a light switch, turns into the other. Into the other. You realize that people want to hear. I'd say 8 out of 10 people that I would talk to, actually I'd engage in a conversation with. 2 out of 10, yeah, man, not for me. No one's being belligerent with me in a public place or something, but 8 out of 10 people wanted to have a conversation. And then the way the conversation goes, you can either you get to the fundamentals, but you may not always get to the gospel message. And the whole point of it is to get to the gospel message. It's like a 3-4 minute kind of strategy. But I realize you're planting seeds. You realize your prayer life turns from things you want and things going on with your life to conversations you had with people on the boardwalk, conversation you had with people at work. Like, so to me, that was such a change because people were being receptive to the gospel, and they were open to hearing spiritual conversations. Some of them have never had a spiritual conversation at all. It doesn't even make sense to them that they would live past this physical earth. And so a lot of that was so I did that for a couple of years at Calvary Chapel, Southern Ocean County. We went down to LBI. I think it's Fantasy Island, had the carnival and stuff. So we got tracks and stuff there. And that was a shift for me to be able to present the fundamentals and clearly articulate. Not a gift. I'm not an evangelist at all. But I think if any Christian has an opportunity to learn some of the skills like that, and I'm telling you, even conversation with friends or family members or coworker, I mean, just it gives you those tools. And so I realized then that my foundation in my faith and what I had known was for me. That's why I realized too, during my college days when I was bantering students and tearing apart with just their ignorance, it was for me. It wasn't for them. Real connections with people to give them Jesus comes from evangelizing. And there are skills, and some people have it naturally, some people don't, but the skills of evangelism is talking to someone's heart, not their head. And so that was another major turning point for me. And just help me realize, I remember there's a verse like, you can give Jesus and give all this knowledge, and if you're not doing it with a loving heart and a heart for the person, you're just a clanking gate, squeaky wheel. And realized, yeah, I'm pretty squeaky wheel. So yeah.
So was there ever a time, I'm guessing based on kind of what you shared, was there ever a time or a moment that it kind of clicked for you? Like, yeah, God is really, he is really real. Can you kind of maybe speak to that particular moment when it became real for you? Like, cause I think you even said that, in college you were kind of like, you were seeing and noticing things, and you even noticed just diving into scripture, how all of these things started to kind of like just piece together. What you were reading was coming to life, and you could see what was around you. It started to make sense. Was there like a particular moment where it just clicked for you?
Yeah, it came in stages, right? So early on, I never doubted that God didn't exist, right? Because that's just how I grew up. But I realized God existed. Then we talked about by the time I'd gotten 16, right, baptized, I had known that the fundamentals were actually should be applied to me. It wasn't just this ambiguous God out there. Now they're personal to me, at least the fundamentals.
Right.
And then knowing that God wants to have a relationship, actually, like it built in stages. And I didn't realize that necessarily until I was, progressing with, spiritual maturity. So, and I knew he wanted me to know that he was super true and powerful and all knowing and the creator. And then more like when I started evangelizing, it was more like, hey, I'm a loving God that wants to connect with people and wants to connect with you. I want you to know more about me. And so then it was, all right, well, your approach to life kind of changes as you realize that God wants to be that involved, right? Like, so you're trudging your own path up to a certain point, even as a young Christian, or spiritually young. You're making your own decisions. You're making your own path, and you may read things in the text that say do this and do that, and you're like, well, I'm going to do those things because the Bible guides in that way. And I realized that I sort of stopped praying for a path to be not shown. I would just say, let my path be the path you want me to be on. And so like, it's kind of maybe a life verse, and it says it a few places. I think it's Proverbs. I'd have to look at the references because there's a couple, but basically you may take your steps, but God guides your path. And the other one, I think it says you may cast the dice, but God determines how they're going to fall. So there's a couple verses and I took that kind of to heart, that he was going to have me do what he wanted to do. And that's what I wanted. I would always pray, I'd be like, I know you have my best interest. I know you know me better than I know myself. That's part of my whole journey now. And you're his, just him revealing so much to me. So that became my prayer. I would say the next, what was your question again? I don't want to move on before you. It was just stages that became more personal, and I relied more on him as opposed to just myself. And then I stopped wanting to rely on myself. I almost wouldn't pray anything personally. Be like, God, do what you want. I'm on board.
So I
don't know if that's even
helpful. So what was there a specific moment that you can remember that it just clicked for you, where you were just like, yeah, okay, God, I hear you loud and clear?
The next part of my journey has to do with discipline, where I realized he was a correcting father over just he wants to have a relationship. I want the best for you. And then I was always, on board, and he's like, I got to hone you in some. And so the next, I don't know if you have a leading question and get into that, but was a discipline. And I realized too, as I was going through it, I guess I'll jump into that next phase. So I moved again. The electric plant that I was at over at the shore was closing down. So I got a new job, still electrical worker. Mm-hmm. And, so I was going through advanced training at the plant, and I just, you develop friendships with people at the plant, your coworkers and stuff. So I'd just become friends. I never had a problem like making friends as much as maybe I was introverted, but, and we just became good friends. We decided to start a business without going like too much into it. It was like food services and a music venue kind of thing. And I didn't know this now. Well, and I knew he wasn't a Christian. I ended up carpooling with him pretty often. We'd have very intellectual, very deep conversations about Christ, about the Bible, anything spiritual. I was like completely very open with this person, and him too. But he had things that he had some abuse in the church where he had gone to before. He wasn't saved, right? So, and he was polling me, and he'd come with challenges and stuff. And then I knew him well enough where we'd talk back and forth, and there was time to develop a good relationship and stuff there. But we had decided this like kind of offshoot, like, hey, we have a couple skill sets. Let's make this business thing. And as this is building, I'm still we're talking on a spiritual level, about just anything. So I'm like, you know what, maybe this will go somewhere. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't matter. Right. It's where God has me right now. And then I kept telling myself with the business venture that we had, like, I don't know how I can glorify God with this. I don't know what I'm doing. If it can, I had no convictions that I was doing something wrong necessarily, but it was, my ultimate lesson was that I yoked myself with someone who was unequally yoked, right? He was non-Christian. And when you start a business, you basically become married to that person, in legal way. You're bound there. That drove me to probably the darkest time in my life where I started my prayer. Ultimately, I'll tell you right back, my prayer ultimately as things were unfolding, the business was insanely successful, down to the nuts and bolts of everything that was happening, outrageously successful. We made back, it took us a year to set it up. We made back our starting money input in like 3 weeks. It was stupid. So the lesson, what I would always pray for as things were unfolding, I realized that our success is always how much money you're making in the business world, Christian, non-Christian, right? That's how the world operates. Okay, yeah, so that was always, we were on the same page there because the business was making outrageous amounts of money. My version of success and what to do with it will still remain, biblical. And his was worldly, which took us down completely opposing paths. And God had given me some red flags and hints early on too. And it's not that I ignored them necessarily. I think God needed me to go through it. I'll call myself an idiot for doing it, but I know I wouldn't change it because I know God needed new lessons for me to learn. And so a few things were done that I knew were the deal breakers of what they were doing and what they wanted to do with the success we were having. And then they were completely opposed to mine. So we then kicked off a 16-month, 18-month legal battle, completely draining, money, emotion, everything. It was the worst of the worst. And the whole time I'm just telling God, I'm like, yeah, I kind of always questioned whether or not what we were doing, I could use it at all to glorify the kingdom, further kingdom. So I'm like, all right, maybe I should have, I kept praying. I'm like, every lesson I learn, make sure that my whole life, I will not forget them. And I knew as a loving father, he was disciplining me, and I wanted to take all that and say, look, the things you're teaching me now, I don't ever want to forget. I want to get the most out of this because I realize I realized I was off track as much as maybe I needed to be, right? There's a combination there. He let me do this, and I wasn't distant from him. Actually, the more I realized I couldn't use this venture in any godly way, the more I was like, God, I feel like I'm in kind of deep here, and things are going well. And so it was tough. So, but anyway, I got there, and then, so that was the worst.
How did that affect you? How did that affect your family, things of that nature?
It was the worst time in Emily and my marriage. We've been married for 12 years. Okay. And it was the worst time relationship wise for us. Family was still always supportive. We'd hang out. Actually, at this point, we had a hard cut with the business. So a lot of it was escape to just hanging out with the parents or friends and things like that. And then Emily and I were trying to get back on track with like our marriage and stuff. So yeah, it was all around bad. The lessons I learned, the top tier lessons, I mean, there's dozens that, you know, as I interact with people and I see people, they'll flash back, and I'm like, God, keep bringing them back into my mind. As it was, don't be unequally yoked with someone who's not a Christian. Don't pursue that type of relationship.
Well, from a business standpoint, I guess.
And
not alienate them and be like, stay away from me, you heathens. Just kind of.
I think there was some calibrating with that. I think I did. I didn't like kick my worldly friends that I work with to the curb or something. That came later, unfortunately. But no, I was still using friends and stuff to just help be encouraging and kind of get through it. And then people were very encouraging through it. So that, sure. But yeah, you don't want to be, you don't want to cut, you don't want to be like not interacting with the world. Right. Yes. And so I had, again, it was like a couple of years of calibrating to kind of get all in. I remember the maddest I got at God, which was, I remember I was driving up 295, and it was, again, just endless. Every email that was sent with this legal thing was like a $600 email, and it, like, nothing ever got, there was a lot of spite, I'd say back and forth, but I couldn't find out why. Can we just like end this? I'm giving you everything. Like, well, I'm not asking for, I'm not even asking for anything. Anyway, so it kept on going. There's a lot of spite, but I was like, I just remember just like screaming out, like in the car. I'm like, God, do you even care what's happening to me right now? Or do you even care? Or what am I supposed to do with it? It was like this exclamation of, I don't know, it just seems weird, but I was at the end of it, because it was way too long. It wasn't a month or 2 months. It was like, almost, we're going on 2 years. So yeah. Wow. And then it was a couple months after that it ended abruptly, clean cut end. And I told him, I was like, hey, make sure I don't forget these lessons. So the longevity of this situation and the intensity of the emotions and things that were going on.
He gave you what you asked for.
He gave me what I asked for, these searing, and so I got closer and closer, I think, just with the discipline aspect of God. And again, you think that's a negative thing. It's not at all. It says, actually, if God wouldn't discipline you if he doesn't love you. And the same way my family and my mom and dad disciplined me when I was growing up, it's the same, right? So he wanted me to learn things through that experience. And I asked him to make sure I never forgot those.
Yeah, I guess God has a tendency to...
There's a reason I'm the way I am. And sometimes it goes back to stuff like that. And again, I try to keep everything in the biblical perspective too. I'm not blindly taking life lessons that settled out. Like, they were spiritually checked. They were biblically checked. Like, yeah. And again, don't unequally yoke yourself with, or bind yourself, right, to somebody, so I'm cautious with that.
Yeah. And God has a tendency to let us go and do things, and then we learn and grow from them. I got a whole laundry list of moments of my own life and that. So it's nothing unusual. And I think it's good because it allows you to see, God in a new way, in a new light. And I think it only strengthens and builds the relationship and the bond that you can have with him, because he is, like, being that father figure. And I know that may be tough for some people because maybe they didn't have their father around all the time, but it lets you know that he's there, and he's never going to inject himself in a place that you don't want him there. So, which I think is a good thing. So, from that experience, what besides, not being equally yoked, do you think that experience drew you a little bit closer to God? Not that I try to promote like proximity, right? Because we very easily can make, our how close is God and make that this, super spiritual thing where it's like, oh, I'm really close to God and I hear everything and anything that he says. And meanwhile, the poor guy who's like struggling, going through something is like, I'm not hearing God right now. So does that make me any closer or further away? But just, I think there's moments in our lives where we can sense God a little bit more, and him doing a work in our life is, I think, more or less what I'm getting at.
Yeah. I'll say God is always the same closeness to you and to me. It's how much we're aware of it. Maybe like I said, at first it's, all right, he's this distant being that's all powerful and creator. And I respect that because, all powerful and all knowing. And then you realize, he's still in your immediate presence.
He's just being a little quieter.
You just realize it a little more as you know more about him and how he works in your life and how he interacts with you. And so, I just say, no matter what situation you're in, God is in your immediate. And sometimes he's quiet and he wants you to be patient and he's got things working out and unfolding. But sometimes it's us, right? We are looking this way and he's this close, but he's right here. And we're like, and he's like, just turn and look at me for a second. Just turn and look. And we're like, I'm not going to turn and look. I'm looking this way.
Yeah.
I think that's more the case is that, and sometimes it takes friends and just studying the Bible and just reading and knowing the accounts in the Old Testament, how he interacted with people faithfully. It helps realize he's doing the same with you. And he's always there. So it's just, as you just mature spiritually, you don't realize that closeness is possible until he shows you it through one way or another. And then you're like, oh, he really is that close. Like it's down to I realize why God doesn't speak audibly to people in the perspective of how intimate God can be with someone. It's impersonal. He interacts with us and speaks to us by the surroundings and the circumstances of our life. It's far more intimate when he can orchestrate the circumstances of our life in a way that we see him working in it. And we're like, wow, he more than just spoke out loud to me. He's guiding my life and this happened. And this person reminded me of this verse. Like that's far more personal than just an audible vision or, and I realized
you see him in you see him in the details of,
and if he's going to manipulate his creation and his timetable around me, I mean, that's far more that's like this close personal. He cares and he's here this close to us. So I think all these kind of turns in my life, or not turns necessarily, these building moments have made me realize that. But he was that close when I was a baby in the nursery. And that's, so I just encourage me for people to realize like sometimes we need an adjustment and sometimes he is just quiet and wants us to be patient and learn from patient. Maybe he wants us to study more. He's going to show you the next step, but he needs you to get into your word. He needs you to get into something he's been pulling, and then he's going to show you the next pieces of what he wants to do with your life. So,
yeah. So if there's somebody that's maybe relatively new to the faith, like a new believer, and someone that is maybe also maturing in the faith, is there any suggestions that you could maybe make to be able to have a sustainable, faithful, consistent relationship with God?
Yeah. So for me, it's definitely studying daily in the Word. I typically jump and stuff sometimes, but a lot of times I'll tackle a book or something at a time. Don't bite off more than you can chew either, because then you're just reading and it's not going in. But for me, it's studying the Word. I think the second most important thing, which really is a late development in my spiritual maturity, is fellowship with people. Again, introverted, fine with my own head, my own emotions. I don't need the outlet. I know some people do, right? That's just, I'm built that way, but fellowship with other believers will keep you on track. Verifying that I mean, you're gonna go through things and that have encouragement and have wisdom and even correction from fellow believers is, that's a late add to my spiritual maturity because of just how I am. But that's going to keep you, your perspective correct, close to God. But ultimately the word is, I mean, he is the word. His character and his personality are found there. You will learn who he is and how he interacts with everyone and everything, especially you, by reading the word. It all comes from staying in the text. Even if it's not what you want to do, you want to wake up, you want to grab coffee. All right, now I'm kind of late. All right, don't skip it because, and I can't say every day from Sunday school. I'll go sometimes leave it sit on the side for a little bit, and then I always realize I'm dry. I miss it, and then I'm not. Just kind of feel lost. And even if what you read the next couple of days isn't, some direct verbal message, it's like, all right, I'm back in my, I'm back in God's hands basically. And he's, at least I'm open to what is in the text to speak to me. And
Okay. Yeah. And then, so what are some things that you find you have a passion for? What do you like? I mean, I know I kind of have an idea what you enjoy because some of the things I enjoy, you enjoy. Yeah. But what are some things that like you're passionate about? And then kind of like, where do you see you and your family being in the next few years? Like, do you guys have any aspirations for things? So I guess it's a two-part question for you.
So I realized too, this kind of goes back to when I had the business stuff going on. I have unstoppable skill when I can draft or create something in my mind. I have the ability to make it physically happen through my hand. I've just gift of the hand.
And I would agree with that because I'm wearing it now. So these are Phil put these together. So I gotta give him a shout out for his super awesome skills. We make a dynamic team, right? Like I put it together and then you made it come to life.
You came over and heckled me as I
just sat there.
That was fun.
In wonder, just like, he's. But go ahead.
But yeah, so I mean, this goes back into my childhood days where my parents would buy me a Nerf gun. And I'm taking it. First thing I do, I wouldn't even fire a shot of that sticky foam arrow, right? So I'd take it apart, silicone the sealing surfaces, get the spring tension a little tighter on it, right? And all the way back. And so even Legos, right? So it's like adding, doing that whole thing from brick to brick, always able to take if I had a final picture in my head, I can essentially through my hands, and no wrong, it's not natural. I just have a determination to work on it and get good. I very much enjoy working with my hands. But I realized with the business, I was doing some not all, but some of it. And again, I wasn't ever convicted necessarily. I was doing wrong in the eyes of the Lord or something, right? But I was using my gifts for myself and for the world. And one of I'd say the second lesson that impacts me mostly is the gifts that God gave me, no matter what they are, they're to be used for Him. And a little bit for me. And what I mean by that is you can use your gifts for God and furthering the kingdom and reaching souls. You can use your gifts for yourself, and that's biblical, and the enjoyment of life. There's things that just bring you enjoyment, and God created those things to be enjoyments in our life and to the friends and family, but they may not fall into the category of I'm furthering the kingdom, right? And then you can use your gifts for the world. And so I realized I was using my gift just for the world to... Again, it didn't necessarily fall under, I couldn't find a way for it to fall under use my gifts for God. And there was some enjoyment because it's like you're making a business and making money or something. But I realized using the world will take and take until you're dead. God got me out before that happened. It will drain you in its entirety. If you do things for yourself, I feel like it's kind of a neutral thing there. God there's overindulgence. but you can use your skills for yourself and just enjoyments of life. But ultimately, I told myself that I won't be using my skills with my hands and aptitudes for anything else other than the kingdom and for my family and immediate simple enjoyments and stuff like that. But that's where I started maybe doing some of the t-shirt stuff. I built I'll build my own furniture in the house and anything that I can get an image of or a picture of or a design of. I'll design it, I'll make it, I'll build it. But I started doing like the screen printing just because people like swag, really. And so I started serving at the church that we're going to now. I was always on the worship team. Music's always been like, I've always enjoyed, I don't get lost in music necessarily, but the mechanics of it and the organization of it and how it syncs with your body and your brain. I've always been just as fascinated. Music's always been fascinating to me. So I've always been, I don't want to say a musician, but an operator of instruments because I don't pick up something long enough to like become a master at it or something. I get the bass or the guitar or like a cello, and I'll play with them to just make them, get good enough to find enjoyment out of it. But so I was serving on the worship team, serving on the technical team at the church too, for a little while there. Just making the virtual world become real and on audible levels and a visual appeal and design, and then the online presence of people watching online and reaching the gospel to people who may not come to church or too scared to come to church or socially or maybe physically anyway. Right. So I was serving there, and then I kind of picked up screen printing because I was frustrated that some of my designs and things that I wanted, they're like, hey, can we make some t-shirts and things and some swag? I'm sure. Yeah, that's kind of cool. I started making my own, and then I started making some with like the church logo on it. Some people like, hey, I want one. I'm like, all right. So I kind of built from there, and I'm like, hey, it's cool. I found t-shirts and like Jesus shirts, even if they're verses, I'm not, even a church affiliation, people are going to ask you about them. So it's an evangelism tool. I ultimately see the screen printing and the hats and patches, whatever, all the stuff I'm kind of working on just on the side as evangelism tools. And I've been told that people they'll get the school shirt or the church shirt or something. They're like, hey, I had a couple conversations at the gym or something that people, and I told them go to church, and we had a couple conversations about God. And so that's how I see, like the screen printing and stuff. It's people like them, so that's cool. But then ultimately, it's an
and you're part of the Disrupted Truth, and you're a disruptor, so you're part of the Disruptor Club. So that's a couple badges. That's a pretty awesome and fun thing, I would think. So is there then do you anything else that you like have a passion to do futuristically that you want to be more involved in? Anything like that?
Yeah. So I it kind of goes back to, I know what some of my strengths necessarily are, and just some gifts that I have. It seems that as I stepped into some of those on my own for serving roles, I was pulled from. So it kind of goes back to, hey, God, I'm going to take steps. You're going to open and close doors. I don't think so far ahead. Maybe goes to your next question. I was like, what do you see for yourself in the future? I'm like, I try not to. I am a big planner, and I will think ahead and think steps forward. And I make those plans, and I right? Like my life verses there. You may roll the dice. You may take those steps, but God's ultimately going to end up. And I'm happy when, not when things don't go the way I think, but I'm like, all right, he's doing something. So keep your head up, keep aware. Don't get discouraged that maybe something happened or the trajectory you thought you were going to go on changed. And that's been a part of my life for a long time. Actually, I've realized that. And I don't know if it's the wrong way to pray necessarily, but when I pray, I just say, God, you know me, you know what is going to bring me fulfillment. I want to use my gifts. You've already, taught me that my gifts you've given me, and I want to return that, right? Like I want to be able to give give back of my gifts to edify and build up the church and body and friends and to spread the gospel, right? So you got to show me where you want me to be and how you want me to do that. What's hard for me sometimes is I feel like I want to do more, but then as I take steps, like, no, not that. Take a step over here, not that. Or something I was in now is out of the picture. I'm like, man, am I at my limit? Like is there more? And he says, ultimately at the end of it all, quiet heart and everything is, just be patient with what I give you, be faithful with what I give you for the season and time. Things may change and be ready, but don't be discouraged or something that, you think you want to do something, but you don't have an outlet or, something or way to serve to do that. So I just kind of, that's always my prayer. Just take me where you want to go and plug me where you want to go. So we'll see. I don't got more than that.
So in closing then, do you have any words of wisdom or any advice that you would want to give anybody considering all the things that you have gone through besides, obviously, don't do business with someone that is unequally yoked, that may not understand the same goals and things that you want to achieve. And I don't know if there's anything else that
I mean, I'm sure there's 100 lessons to pull that one. It's just like, if you don't unequally yoke yourself with someone who's not a Christian, if you are a Christian, because you have conflicting interests, the world and God's and God do not mix. So just be careful with worldly ventures too. I mean, it's maybe seems basic, but because it'll drain you. It'll take you down to the low places. But
and I guess listen to God when he speaks.
Listen to God when he speaks. Yeah. And just be aware that his plan is going to be different than yours, and you're going to want to do things, but just understand that he knows you better than yourself. I mean, he built you down to built you physically, right? But I mean, down to your personality, your ambitions, all those things come from him. His plan for you is to have fulfillment in what he gave you. And so, just, and when things don't work out, like I said, just be patient and realize he might have to build you up a little bit more maturity before we want to step on the gas and get there.
Yeah.
But he's got to make sure we're mature enough to,
I guess the saying is trust the process, right? You gotta be willing to
maybe
trust
more practical. You'll realize, I'm sure I'm all about the practical application to it. So maybe just as an example, I've seen people get into leadership positions because of their ambition and loyalty and stuff like that, but they do not have the skill set and maturity spiritually, or even, not even in a church. Like, there's a time and a place to be a leader. Skill sets need to be developed. That applies to the church. Just don't jump into something that is further than God wants you to get in. Cause I'll tell you, there's another maybe side lesson here is God's going to let you make wrong decisions. I've heard this from multiple people, and I prayed this myself. He's like, God, if you don't want me to do this, stop me. I'll tell you right now, he will not. If you're praying that, he expects you to find the answer. The text has the answers to what you should and should not be doing. And if you're at that point where you're asking that, you already know the answer, and he'll let you venture down that path.
Yeah.
And then he'll discipline you when you do. So if you think that is a good prayer, it is not. Do not pray that. I know many people who have prayed, well, God's just going to stop me in my tracks. If I'm going to do this thing, and then God, please stop me if you don't want me to do that. And he will not. He will not. You should know. He knows you better. You know him better. You know the word better. That is, and maybe I'm emphasizing too much, but I'm telling you, I've seen it before. I've done it myself, and it led me to the darkest places. And again, not that I wouldn't, looking back, go there, because I learned what I learned, and I took that to heart. And so, but careful with that prayer if you're praying that.
Yeah. And we've had our discussions, through podcasts and different things that you're warning on. So that's good stuff. Good stuff, Phil. So thank you for sharing and
Amen.
sharing
Thanks
your
for having
heart.
me on.
And so
I don't think too many people know my testimony. They don't ask, and I don't tell.
Well, you just did. I asked, and here you are. So I'm sure it'll be a blessing to people that hear it. And thank you for just sharing your heart and sharing your experiences of what you've gone through, and if you've hopefully people understand like the value of what we do, why we do is just again, like I always share, like this channel exists to inspire, motivate, connect people to God, his word, and his purpose for your life within the body of Christ. And that's what this channel exists for. So if you found if you found value in the things that the discussions that we've had, hopefully, you definitely, if you haven't, like and subscribe and hit the notification bell. Phil's all privy to the notification bell, I think. So, but again, thank you everybody for watching, and share your thoughts in the comment section, and give a shout out to Phil and the rest of the awesome Disruptor crew. So until next time, we love you guys. You're awesome. Peace.